Welcome back to the Family Ties podcast. This is Julia, and here is my special co-host and sister.
Hey guys, it's Kelley. I know it's been a little while since you've heard from us. We've been off the grid.
Roop. Things got pretty crazy. So we're back.
Yeah, and you're going to hear a little bit of weariness in our voices. We've had a very long last week with this election. And so I don't quite feel like I'm on the other side of it, just because I'm just at this point worried and in damage control mode of how much more damage will Trump do before he leaves the White House. Who all is he going to fire? You know, what all is he going to undo? And, you know, to me, it's not over till it's over. And it doesn't seem to be over.
No. And he still refuses to concede. So there's that.
I mean, the only thing that I think I would get satisfaction from is just to see him frog marched out of there by somebody, because he can be removed. So anyways, let's continue. Guys, Julia and I have an announcement for you. After covering some of these homeschooling gone wrong cases, we want to throw our full purpose and intent with this podcast behind and into these crimes and deaths that are being perpetrated all over America against the most vulnerable and helpless. So this is not often spoken of in day-to-day conversation, nor does it really make the news headlines unless it's extreme. We would like to be a voice for the voiceless. We want to educate you on the difficulties and dangers that many of our nation's children face on a daily basis under the radar. So going forward, this podcast is going to cover as many cases as it takes for our citizens to wake up and start demanding action and law reform for children. Along the way, we will provide you with information on where you can get involved, what laws are going to be addressed and potentially passed within local and national legislature and courts. We as citizens bear the responsibility of making sure that our lawmakers know where we stand in regards to actually passing and enacting better laws.
Yeah. And I assume that most people stay away from discussing these kind of cases and issues as often as other like true crime stories get shared due to how depressing and disturbing they are in nature. You know, we all love true crime, but whenever it comes to kids, I feel like it hits it's a very specific note and it impacts people differently. And, you know, you're not as excited to listen to a true crime story that involved children, you know. However, you know, as difficult as it is to listen to these stories, I think it's after we've gone over some of these and seen just some of the horrific details on some of these, it's absolutely essential that we give these children their voice back, that we shed light on often these kind of brushed under the rug, these hushed tales, to make a real impact and change, to hopefully begin eliminating at least the intensity and frequency of these cases. You know, it's never going to take them away completely, but if we could make a difference, that's the real goal. But we have to get over ultimately just how uncomfortable these kind of cases make us feel, actively seek them out and work to make changes necessary in the court of law to give these innocent children some overdue justice.
I agree completely, Julia. And Julia has picked our topic for this week. And I have to be honest with you, I had difficulty reading through all the details on this. I had looked at the photo of the girl, and she reminded me of that from far away of our niece, Felicity. And I just, it really upset me so much just thinking about how similar they are in age and just how just the details were so dark. I had a lot of difficulty with this one.
Yeah. In each of these pictures that they have of her, she just looks like a little ray of sunshine. You know, she's super cute. She's in some of her pictures, you know, she's got the pigtail, you know, and she's just looks like a really good kid, a solid kid who just needs to be able to be a kid.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today, Julia?
So we have today a really tragic case that came out of West Virginia. It involves child homeschool torture and homicide. with the victim being Raylee Jolynn Browning, age 8. She was born in 2010. It doesn't appear that her biological mother, Janice Riston, was very involved in her life. It's something that's seen in a lot of cases and discussed in the findings of the Knox Child Torture Report. So when Raylee was an infant, she moved in with her biological father, which is Marty Browning. The abuse started pretty much right away. Around 2011, she had noticeable injuries when she had been taken to the hospital. But at that time, they quickly dismissed it and tried to throw off the doctors by saying she was showing signs of like self-mutilation, which should have been a red flag, in my opinion.
She's an infant at this point, right?
Infant. Yeah, she was 1 year old at the first point. In 2011, she would have been 1 year old when the first injuries were noted at the hospital. So apparently it's unclear if the hospital people there at the doctors, the nurses, or if anyone contacted CPS when they noticed it, or no one knows if they bought the story. So she was brought in for injuries, but the people that were really heavily involved in her life was beyond just her father. Her father had a girlfriend, a live-in girlfriend, and her name was Julie Dawn Technell, and her sister, Sherry. So this is this whole story kind of reminds me of like a evil
Cinderella,
evil sisters kind of thing. And there was a podcast,
evil stepmothers.
Yes, there was a podcast that kind of made that connection too. The podcast Suffer the Little Children covered this case, and she had made the connection of this complex where it's like the Cinderella complex, where in cases often like this, you have a stepmother influence. And in this case, it was not only just the stepmother, but her evil sister who were just ganging up on her. But anyway, so it was Raylee with her father, his live-in girlfriend, and his girlfriend's sister. So for a while, Raylee was going to public school, but she was often not fed and suffering through starvation, like they weren't letting her eat at home. So when she was at school, she would ask for extra food, and this was like a red flag for them there. She was also suffering medical abuse. She was on like 7 different medications covering stuff for like autism and mood disorders. But the authorities and the doctors that ended up looking into this case found that most of them were more than likely unnecessary. And it seemed like it was just this crazy cocktail of drugs for such a tiny little person. Wasn't even diagnosed, officially diagnosed with any of this. So it's like, I'm wondering even how did this happen? Sorry, the Kendrick just walked in front of the microphone.
Well, I mean, and like we kind of can see this was done mainly, I think, by the stepmother or the girlfriend, not even the mother, out of some extra way to control this little kid, just to keep her subdued. And I think that's heinous. It's not uncommon for non-biological children to be abused by the mother figure in the house. Women feature prominently in child torture cases. And it's also common that the mother figure encouraged everyone else to abuse the child, singling the child out for torture, but not torturing the biological children. So in this case, Sherry was the main caretaker of the 4 children in the household. And she singled out Raylee because she was not one of Julie's biological children. Another child who was one of Julie's biological children, known only as V, was also singled out for abuse because she was of mixed race. So race is absolutely a reason that children are victimized, which we saw in the case of the Hart children that we covered in our last episode. But however, it appears that Raylee bore the brunt of the abuse in the house. Teachers at Raylee's school noticed that she was bruised and hungry and called Child Protective Services multiple times. Leading up to her death, Raylee was admitted to the hospital on several occasions. Raylee's caretakers reported to doctors that she had a history of self-harm, and that was the explanation for her injuries.
Weren't the teachers noticed that there wasn't even that wasn't a problem when she was at school, though.
Right. They didn't notice
only
any
something that
issues.
They could witness.
She loved her teachers. She, loved school and didn't have any behavioral issues. So yeah, Julia's right that was never substantiated. So they tried to blame her so-called disabilities for the injuries that she sustained, including a broken femur, which Julia and I are finding is pretty common.
Yeah.
And it's definitely common in child abuse stories. So it's common in these stories where
the clearly, guys, their just thigh bone, basically, and it takes a lot of force and energy into causing a fracture or break. So when that happens, and she was found with what was it, fractured femur?
Broken.
There, yeah. What did they claim happened, Kelley?
Oh, they just, were blaming her disabilities for the injury. So
they said that she kicked a wall in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's
out of
right.
anger, and broke her own femur. Fucking false.
Yeah, that's science isn't going to back that up.
No,
clearly. It's not clear at this time if the hospital contacted CPS. However, doctors can usually tell if the injury is because of child abuse. So according to Raylee's sister, Raylee was instructed by Sherry to lie to CPS, and Raylee complied because she was scared. I know what that's like, but not anywhere on this scale. Nowhere close to this scale.
Oh, no.
So after a while, V reported Sherry pulled... after a while, the sister reported Sherry pulled Raylee out of public school to homeschool her because she could not think of any more lies to explain Raylee's condition. Pulling a child out of public school to cover abuse is very common, as is isolating the child from everything in their lives and everyone.
This is astonishing to me with the amount of evidence they have from the visits to the hospital.
Yeah.
And from teachers' accounts.
I'm just really sick of these stories where, and there's so many of them. The fact that I'm already sick and we've just gotten it just started, is that they're all clearly, they've been reported. They're on the books, which, we've talked about the statistics and how difficult that is to even get to the level where it's investigated. So the fact that they continue to slip through the cracks, this is beyond any kind of excuse. And it just makes me ill. Raylee was not even allowed to talk to the other children in the household. This social isolation typically involves preventing the child from attending school or daycare. 29% of school-aged children were not allowed to attend school. 2 children, though previously enrolled, were disenrolled by their caregiver and received no further schooling. An additional 47% who had been enrolled in school were removed under the auspice of homeschooling. This homeschooling appears to have been designed to further isolate the child and typically occurred after closure of a previously opened CPS case. Review of these cases found no true educational efforts were provided to the homeschooled children. Their isolation was accompanied by an escalation of physical abuse. I mean,
see, that's what gets me through all the research about this case. CPS seems to have just done a real shit ass job. And then there's no accountability. Like CPS doesn't make a statement or anything. You don't see that anywhere where anyone representing CPS made any acknowledgement to the case.
And it's not just that, Julia. It's the fact that we're seeing that this is statistically a pattern with abusers to when they've been called out and they're being investigated to yank that kid from school because they don't need that investigation anymore.
Not only the investigation, but there's no other outside person to see that something's going on and report them. If they're home, there's no one to report them except themselves, and they're not going to do that.
Right.
So when Raylee was pulled out of school and homeschooled, Sherry was free to basically abuse Raylee to the full extent that she wanted to, with zero repercussions, because with Raylee home and not going to public school, it was within her complete control. She, there was zero accountability. Julie wasn't going to do anything about it, because we'll get into that in a second. And Marty, he's got reasons, past and family reasons, that we'll also get into. So there was like no accountability in there, and homeschooling was like the answer to get away with it and get worse.
So just like Julia says, homeschooling was just more of an opportunity for Sherry to abuse Raylee, making her stand in place for hours and walk through the hallways of the house instead of providing her with an education. Apparently, the other children in the house were actually homeschooled. I use air quotes. Apparently, the other children in the house were actually homeschooled, and Sherry was part of a homeschool group. So while the other children in the group were educated in the home, Raylee was made to either stand or walk the halls for hours. It does not appear that anyone from the homeschool group reported this. Of course not. We've talked about that as well.
They're looking out for each other.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, and so many people view common sense laws as a threat against their freedom and their rights. Where in like this case, there are a lot of homeschoolers that end up opposing these kind of laws or structures, or reporting each other, because it's a threat to their own existence in their mind. It shouldn't be a threat if you're doing it correctly, like you think or say you are. If you're doing it for the right reasons, it shouldn't be a problem. But a lot of the times, that's why they do. It's because they're not. They're looking out for each other.
We're going to go through a lot of those actual comments too.
Oh yeah, those Facebook comments, that whole thread. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. We'll get there. It's some fucked up shit. During this time, it turns out that Raylee was sharing a room with Sherry. Raylee, even though she was older, she didn't need to bring a diaper. She was forced to wear a diaper because she was often found wetting the bed, which is found to be common in response to abuse. In response to that, they did not respond correctly. Had her forced to wear a diaper, sleep on the floor. She was often also beat with objects. According to V, she would be beaten with a belt, a spoon, metal objects. Investigators found, and this is after everything was too late, of course, they found a claw hammer and a sex toy in the shared bedroom together. Like the clawed hammer and the sex toy were grouped together. Just the images that my mind creates when I read that is just really dark, really fucking dark. And
they're not saying that these may have been used. These are connected with this case for a particular reason. So,
well, when you hear the rest of the details as we get through it, it feels like they're definitely connected. In addition to that kind of, physical abuse, medical abuse, humiliation and neglect, because the humiliation and where they're basically pitting the kids against her, the other kids in the house against her. She was also starved. So when she was in public school, she would ask cafeteria workers for extra food, which is often another pattern of child torture cases where it's common that children are food and fluid restricted. So not having enough to drink was what ultimately ended up killing Raylee. Sherry decided to punish Raylee by refusing to allow her to drink any liquid, including water, for 3 days. So V, one of the other kids, reported that Raylee was so thirsty that she drank from the toilet. And then shortly afterwards, that Raylee was found septic. So that ended up occurring around Christmas time, 2018. And Raylee ended up becoming unconscious. And which this surprises me too. The amount of times that they take her to the hospital.
Is this something where, kind of like our upbringing, there was a lot of abuse, a lot of physical abuse, but most of it was done while dad was away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they both believed in spanking. And when dad would come home and she told him about whatever we did, we would get another spanking. But was she telling him the whole time that he was the main disciplinarian? Like, it was like this, was this lady trying to fool someone who would like to be fooled? Like somebody who knows that something really fucked up is actually happening, but they're being told like, no, she's hurting herself. I'm serious. Like, I can't get this child, she's a mess.
Yeah.
She's a violent mess. And we got to do something. We got to get her on medication. Like, is this being...
It seemed like they really worked on framing up that case for themselves from the get-go, which, they probably thought they were smart little shits doing that because they started it when she was an infant.
So that's my question, is just how much did he know? How much did he pretend not to know? But I also would be very curious to see if this was all part of the story she was spinning to him as well.
Yeah, to Marty.
Yeah. So is she taking the kid to the hospital because, she has this whole farce going that she does care for this kid? Like,
she's got to be spinning that, because any other way, if she's not trying to spin it, she's definitely looking bad. So, they starve her. They prevent her from drinking water. She drinks from a toilet. She turns septic. It's Christmas. It's fucking Christmas, and they're starving this girl. And just a reminder, she's 8 years old. She's a child. So we get up to that point, and then finally they wait to take her until she becomes unconscious. She ended up passing away there, but doctors had said she had been severely unwell for a long time. And that it should have been very, very clear for everyone at the home to notice that without a doubt. She was not well. She should have been taken to a hospital sooner. She should have been, she should have had proper fluids. She should have been eating. And the condition she was in, the doctor said it was so severe, anyone with zero medical knowledge should have noticed and done something about it. So they didn't do anything until like the very last second, until it was too late. The medical staff ended up calling authorities to report that Raylee was in cardiac arrest, and her body was covered in bruises and lacerations. Again, Sherry was like trying to make it seem like it was a result of her medication, that she fell in the shower. And apparently falling in the shower, I didn't know that before, but falling in the shower is apparently a really common reason that child abusers give when a child's injured. And I think falling down the stairs is another one.
That and wife beaters do that too. I just fell down the stairs. Yeah.
It's like, no, you didn't.
It's common. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So after that, after the medical staff reported that, and of course, this is after Raylee's passed, police ended up going to their home to interview everybody. And turns out everyone gave conflicting stories as to why Raylee had died, why she was covered in injuries. Everybody had different stories going on. And so police thought it pretty suspicious. And it's like, it's about fucking time, but you're a little too late. But, during their search of the home, that's when they found that claw hammer and the sex toy in the room. So
the room that she shared specifically
with Sherry. Yes. So another important thing to note, and this is where the weird connection of the claw hammer and the sex toy come into play as well as the issue with her, the bed being a known sign of abuse victims. The medical examiner reported that Raylee had passed away from an infection, likely caused by drinking the toilet water because she was so thirsty, which ended up leading to sepsis. But they also reported that she had a torn rectum. She was covered in bruises, burns, lacerations. So torn rectum, 8 years old.
I'm not a violent person, but I would very much like to get my hands on these ladies. And
just seeing the pictures of them, they just
evil.
You know,
just.
I know it always seems super shallow when I say it out loud, but I feel like some of these people really their outside definitely reflects
yes,
the stories of what they do to people. You can see it. You can just see it.
So in December of 2019, which is not even a year past,
yeah,
guys.
This is fresh.
This is super fresh. All three adults were charged in Raylee's death. Sherry, age 35, was arrested. She looks about 50. But this took
a year after Raylee died for them to get arrested. Just let that sink in for a second. She passed around Christmas time of 2018. They weren't arrested until December 2019. Yeah. A whole fucking year passed. Sure, investigations. But there are other kids that have been in play this whole time.
Sherry, age 35, was arrested on one count each for death of a child by parent, guardian, or custodian, and child neglect causing death, both felonies. Julie Tichenal, age 36, who is the girlfriend, was charged with the same thing, and so was Marty, the father, who's age 34. So he's the youngest one in this crowd. At the time, Julie was the reigning Miss Oak Leaf Festival. Her title has been stripped since then. And let me tell you,
that whole beauty pageant thing is ridiculous. I feel like there's and why was it so important?
Well, in addition to that, I feel like something about this little girl and how beautiful she is and was
made them fucking jealous.
Made them jealous. Not just the fact that she wasn't their daughter. It was just like any other little girl that wasn't their own child that took Marty's attention in any way was going to catch grief. So
yeah, and it didn't help either that she was really pretty. She was a really pretty cute girl, and I think that they were pretty obsessed and jealous and just hateful to her also. Because of that too.
Part of their worst instincts they let run rampant here. So an investigation by Oak Hill Police Department Detective Sergeant James Pack was reportedly hampered by a lack of cooperation from West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources Child Protective Services, which had an open file on Raylee at the time that she died. So she had an open file. It wasn't even closed. Nobody had looked back into it. I mean, we are talking about well over a year that someone
and all
didn't
these
go
other
in.
Kids are in play as well. That's the thing here too that really gets me about that is like they're letting this sit open and there are these other kids involved.
Absolutely. So Oak Hill Police Department Chief Mike Wisman on December 11th verified a December 10th report by a Fayette official that CPS had not speedily submitted to police requests for CPS records on Raylee. So, I mean, all right, so we already have CPS failing, but they didn't even bother to submit this to police records. When they requested it, when the police requested it, they didn't even speedily submit it. It's like, this is how slow CPS is. They can't even comply when a request is made by the law. Yeah. So when
that just tells you how it is when somebody else is just doing their citizen due diligence.
So when the police department finally received Raylee's files in November, officials say that they were not even complete. So this would explain why it is currently not entirely understood how CPS was involved, but it seems pretty clear that they dropped the ball with Raylee. And to add insult to ridiculous amounts of injury, Marty, Sherry, and Julie have all been released on bond when this article was written. So we'll kind of update you there.
And that was kind of like in June. I think they had been, all three had been released by June of this year, 2020.
Oh, good. But unsurprisingly, this case sent ripples through the West Virginia community and legislatures. A new law is being sponsored by Delshon Flaherty, a Democrat of Ohio. Go figure, because we can't get any right-wing support for this. Known as Raylee's Law, or HB 4440. This law would prevent people who have an open CPS case from homeschooling, and also prevent people who have a criminal record of violence or domestic violence from homeschooling. This we talked about with Rachel Coleman, about how, these in Hawaii, do you remember they tried to pass that law that was very similar to this about preventing people with criminal records or domestic violent abuse records from
and that small group of people who opposed it.
1,000 people showed up at the courthouse to protest this. It's like, what is wrong with you? What on earth? There is no reason, and we'll get into that, as to why you would oppose something so sensible. But Julie, continue.
The state law does not require homeschool educators to report suspected child abuse or neglect. By contrast, teachers and public school administrators are mandatory reporters of child abuse. So that's a nice aspect of public school, is where you have plenty of other adults and other people that are witnesses, and call CPS and to make claims. State law right now, as it is, doesn't require homeschool to report abuse at all. So they face a criminal misdemeanor conviction of up to 90 days in jail and up to a $5,000 fine for failing to report child abuse or neglect. So those who fail to report a sexual assault face 6 months in jail and up to $10,000 in fines. Also, state law does not require a homeschool education cooperative or association to verify that member students were legally withdrawn from school. So there's not even a requirement to make sure that this was legally done. Like parents can just take them out, and no one asks any questions. No one asks, hey, what's going on? Do we have some problems at home? Do we have some behavioral problems? Nobody even gets to ask the question. They're able to just take them out. State law does nothing about it. So while there are many more areas that need to be regulated when it comes to like homeschooling, the Raylee law is a really good start for at least the state of West Virginia, and for other states to look as an example. It's just way too easy for people to pull their kids out of public school and away from mandated reporters and keep them isolated in the home, where abuse often escalates into homicide. We have a link on the page where you can track the progress of Raylee's law. We also really ask that you take the time to go to our call to action page and visit. For Raylee's laws, you can click on West Virginia state, and it'll take you to a page with links and information where you can not only track the progress of the law, but information on how you can call or email the West Virginia House to show that your support for the law, or even other relevant regulations and changes that would help support some of the stuff.
Absolutely. And I'm not even going to open up the link that I have here, but Julia, what do you remember of the story where they talk a bit about Raylee's granddad's crimes?
Oh my gosh. So through the different articles that we read for this report, we came across Suffer the Little Children podcast, where she covered this multiple times. But she, through her research, found that Marty Browning's father, so that would be Raylee's grandfather, had been to prison for sexual abuse of minors, of children. So this was a problem, and more than likely a problem with her father as well. Just putting those pieces together, and the fact that also, even if he didn't directly do anything where that was found as evidence through this case, he definitely didn't do anything about it when his girlfriend and his girlfriend's sister were doing stuff to her. So this is like a pattern of just abuse in their family, and it's just so disturbing.
Yeah. And before we move on, guys, I'm just going to shout out that we have gotten our information from lots of different places, but the past article that we just referenced is from the Coalition for Responsible Home Education site, their sister site, the invisibleChildren.org, and Homeschooling's Invisible Children. And they track these cases too. But there are so many of them that there's just no way for this site to be able to track and tell all of these stories. I know they do a fantastic job, but this article was the story of Raylee Jolynn Browning, a homeschool homicide and torture case by their reporter, Kate Corbett Pollock, from the 21st of February of this year. So shout out to them for doing this hard work and putting this all together. But I kind of looked up a little bit further, and apparently, currently there is no medical or legal definition of child torture that is uniformly recognized by lawmakers in the United States, although child torture is prescribed in many child abuse statutes. So child torture is not a new separate crime from the child abuse. It is a heightened level of child abuse. So the child abuse crime becomes a lesser included offense of child torture. So basically, the way the law has it, it seems like a loophole. Once again, another loophole for children where child abuse is not even registered as a separate offense from just child abuse. So, and I know abuse is abuse, but this is different. Like, this should be a totally different thing on its own. So if they're going to try this or these people, they need to try them for not only death, neglect, and child abuse. They need to also tack on child torture. So to me, it should be a separate offense altogether. So
I agree.
If child abuse and child torture were made into separate crimes, prosecutors would lose the opportunity to prove that the conduct is child torture within the meaning of the child abuse statute. It would instead need to prove child torture using more elements and higher standards. So I think there's still some difficulties in, how this is just not been resolved in our judicial system. The main advantage of having a child torture crime is the defendant would serve a much harsher penalty. However, this is offset by a sentencing enhancement. So it could render an offender to serve a similar sentence. I mean, as a separate crime, though, prosecutors may charge defendants with child torture as a bargaining tool for guilty pleas, minimizing the seriousness of the Child Torture Act. So the benefits weigh against a separate child torture crime, since its use could be manipulated and its purpose jeopardized.
Just to hear that said out loud, where in any manner these lawyers have this audacity to try to manipulate sentences for their defendants in cases related to child torture and be like, well, see, it's not quite child torture. So it's like they're Hermione's over here, Leviosa versus Leviosa. They're like, is it child abuse or da? It's no, it's fine. So it's like the fact
so they're saying that the whole idea of child torture as a separate offense actually undermines the case in the beginning of prosecuting them for child abuse.
Right.
And that's really difficult for me to...
I can't wrap my mind around it. It's just... And lawyers, how do lawyers live with themselves when for those who represent these kind of cases where the people are guilty? And I'm all for, people making mistakes and having somebody defend them in the court of law, because the system is messed up. But when it comes to child abuse or child torture, the fact that there's someone trying to manipulate their sentence is just, he's trying to get them the best deal. It's like, how can you live with yourself?
So just keep that in mind, Julia, while we start to, all right, guys, we're going to dissect a few things. I found Raylee's mom on Facebook because I was just curious, like, about what the story might be with the mom, why she
why was she not
absent.
Involved so much?
And I can't say I don't know, but I do know from what I have seen on her page that she loved this child, that she loved her. And there were circumstances in her own life that maybe prevented her from having Raylee in her own custody. I mean, the fact that the father had custody just kind of tells us there's more to the story than meets the eye. But it seems to me that the only decent person in Raylee's life couldn't have her. So,
and she seemed to have a really good relationship with Raylee. Like when they did have visitation, there was actually a point shortly before Christmas at 2018. Apparently their last conversation was when they were together and Raylee was asking her if she could live with her instead. And apparently Janice was telling her, it's all based on what you want, but, I'm not sure how it's going to end up. I can definitely try. But, the court system usually relies on they'll usually listen to a little older of a kid, 12 years old or something, to pick where they live. But we can definitely try. And Raylee was really looking forward to that. And I think she has siblings through her mom as well. And she had seen them a few times, but she had really positive relationships with them. But apparently the last conversation they had was Raylee wanting to move in with her.
And surprisingly enough, we don't hear the mom mention any kind of behavioral issues or self, mutilation, those types of things. So,
and she had been trying to report stuff as well. There was actually a point where she had, when she had some visitation, she noticed injuries. She took Raylee to the doctor, and basically the court and the doctors didn't want to hear what she had to say because it seemed like she was, they were looking at it as if she was trying to manipulate the situation and be like, see what they're doing to her. And it's really, it's true. But they were lady is just trying to.
But in addition to that, they're already maybe not at the same time as she was trying to report it, but she made this report. And then at some point, the CPS case was opened and never closed and never further looked into. And, these are things that shouldn't fall through the cracks. How on earth could they have missed that and not looked into that further? I mean, yeah, there's no excuse. I'm asking questions knowing I won't get the answer. But this following post was made by her mom. And it just says, "Oh, Raylee, baby mom misses you so bad. My heart aches and cries for you all day, every day. You were so perfect. On July 11th, 2010, I knew I'd met my reason to fight in life, and you was it. I love you, sunshine. My God, I love you, and I will never stop fighting for you and continue to fight for what is right." I mean, it seems like whatever happened in this woman's life, she's really a kind, wonderful individual, and I really have a lot of respect for her. Then
it seemed like she was making a lot of efforts.
Yes, she was. Julia, read this, and I will be the Karen in this situation. There's always got to be a Karen.
Yeah. So on January 21st, Janice posts, I need your help. As some of you know, Raylee Browning died as a result of abuse and neglect at the hands of her father, stepmother, and aunt. They were allowed to take her out of public school to homeschool her despite numerous CPS referrals. Subsequently, and without educators being able to monitor Raylee's welfare, she died as a result of the actions of her father, stepmother, and aunt. House Bill 440, known as Raylee's Law, was introduced today. It states, if there is a pending child abuse or neglect investigation against the parent or the person instructing, or the parent or person instructing has ever been convicted of domestic violence, child abuse, or neglect, the County Board of Education may not authorize homeschool instruction. Please contact every representative on the House and Senate education committees and urge them to pass this. There's a link, and it says for the House members of the Education Committee. Another link for the Senate members of the Education Committee. Click on the name of the member for the House and Senate, and their email is listed. Please email Joe Ellington first. She lists his email address. Then email the other members. Please share this. We must flood them with emails or phone calls to get this passed.
And I say, because I had to put my own commentary in here, I said most people on here on this post of hers had kind and agreeing comments, but this one individual hatefully comments on several posts. Like, she wears everyone out repeatedly. So her comment to this like common sense call to action is, this bill is dangerous. It's hidden by good intentions, which will in turn be abused because of the wording and cause harm to many innocent homeschooling families. This is a crack in the door to go after homeschoolers, period. A bill to address the failures in the CPS system needs addressed. They and her parents were the ones who failed and killed Raylee. I will not support this bill. I will not support giving CPS or the government more power. CPS needs reform. Keep the focus on making change where it needs, which is our failing CPS system.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How is that a threat to other homeschool families when it's
everything's a threat to them, Julia?
How? How? I mean, yes, it's also CPS's problem, but another part of the problem is where people who have abuse history use homeschool as the cop-out. And if you're not using it as a cop-out, this should not be considered a threat to you. If if you have a history of abuse, domestic violence, any shape or form, why would you be okay with someone being able to take a child out of school with that history? Why is that allowed? How is that the government taking more power? Stop using that fucking government power shit. Just
let's see if they can better inform us as to what this is. Another stupid lady says, homeschooling can be denied if there is a pending abuse or neglect situation. Do you know how many families are reported to CPS because their child is outside playing? Oh, go fuck yourself, woman.
None of those get substantiated.
And you know, like,
I can't
from the research we've done, Julia, they don't even investigate the serious.
They don't. Children die because they don't even fucking investigate. So, oh, boo-hoo. If somebody calls, guess what? Nothing's going to happen.
Also, boo-hoo, because, you know, your family is not going to, she's doing that whole trick that mom used to do with us, that if CPS or if anybody saw us outside playing, we would be yanked from the home and taken away and all separated and live in different homes and never see our parents again.
Yeah, that's the same stuff that the kids get told to.
Yes.
Like we were to try to have us fear CPS. Like, they're going to tear us apart.
She says, CPS then opens a file for a pending investigation. Neglect is a very broad subjective term. Oh, no, it isn't, lady. It's pretty clearly defined. Also,
pretty sure she's been accused of some sort of neglect by some other parent that she fucking hates. And she's just now out. She's defensive now. She's just
not saying anything intelligent because she next says, this bill does nothing to help children. What?
Yeah,
lady.
She's clearly speaking from a place of defensiveness due to an accusation at some point.
The sentence immediately following the proposed language plainly states the county board already has authority to deny homeschooling if good and reasonable justification is furnished. I believe a convicted abuse felony would fall under this. Lady, guess what? It doesn't.
It doesn't. And that's what we're trying to do. So then if you don't have a problem with that, then that's what this is.
Lady. Okay. All her abuse occurred when she was in plain sight and nothing was done. So why not honor her by asking the proper questions? What happened to the CPS guidelines, the reporting methods, the tracking methods, the mandated reporting?
We're asking those questions too,
exactly.
Just so you know. All of the above.
All of the above, you stupid moron of a lady. Tying child abuse into the homeschool law is an insult to hundreds of families in West Virginia who have sacrificed income, way of life, and time for their children. This does nothing to solve the problem. It is a feel-good Band-Aid for some people.
What does that even mean?
Listen, lady.
How is that a feel-good Band-Aid saying if you have child abuse history or domestic violence, you can't isolate your child? How is
everything is a threat?
Feel-good Band-Aid. What does that have to threaten you? Fuck you.
And this is the thing. Like when she's like, hundreds of families sacrifice their income and way of life and time for their children. It's like, no, you're religious zealots who cannot have your kids in school, and you need to indoctrinate them with your own personal flavor.
That's also concerning. Why are you sacrificing income that's going to be what's actively supporting your child?
It's like, listen,
and well-being of your child.
That's not going to choose this
to be proud of. Sacrificing your income for your kid. Why? Your kid needs that income.
Yeah, it goes so much beyond that. That's just barely putting a pin in the whole swath of issues that parents like to somehow make it seem as if they're doing all of this for the children. It's like, listen, if I'd had a choice, I would have been like, can I go to school so I can actually learn? Because I really like this and I think I could do well with someone who actually cares about teaching me. So I would have, like, from a child on, picked school.
Oh, absolutely. Anyway, I wanted to go to school.
What does this other Karen have to say?
This will not solve a thing. They are going after a minority group of people that had nothing to do with failing Raylee. Oh, now they're worried about minorities. Oh, homeschoolers aren't minority. You chose that.
We wish you were a minority.
I prefer minorities.
Yeah.
The monsters are out on bond walking around. Why? They should all be in jail. True. Maybe the only true thing I've heard so far, but like also out of context. What else are you saying? Public school teachers, therapists, counselors, and CPS also failed this child long before she was allegedly homeschooled. If her case was open in CPS, then the school board could have denied their request to homeschool. There were preventative measures there and ignored. Let's hold the correct people accountable. Oh,
so then somebody's like, hey, guys, the teachers did, in fact, try to do something about this. CPS was contacted and Nicholas County refused to do anything about it. So no, don't bundle the teachers and her school into those who failed her. Amen.
Exactly. She says, the school board approved their notice of intent to homeschool, which by current law, they have the right to deny it because of having open CPS case. They did not deny it. Why? They had every right to deny their right to pull her out.
No, they didn't.
And it wasn't
the whole
law.
Point of this law.
That's the whole point of this law, because it wasn't law. So that's why they're not going to do it.
God, this lady's ignorant.
Fucking thick.
And guys, can we just, before Julie finishes this, just remind you that this is all happening on this poor mother's Facebook page.
The mother
she brutally lost her child. And this woman wants to argue against a law that could protect other children. What a slap in the face.
Selfish cunt is what she is.
Yeah.
I will say that as many times as it makes people feel uncomfortable because it's true. All right. So she's saying they had the right to deny it and to pull her out. She's saying, okay, CPS should have been right at their doorstep the moment they heard they were trying to pull her out of school. This poor child should have been removed from the home a long time before they were allowed by the board of CPS to homeschool. Passing the blame onto homeschooling is wrong. Making a law targeting homeschoolers is wrong and opens the door to the law being misused and abused to punish homeschoolers. Oh, Karen. She would have still been alive if CPS would have done their job. Partly true, but this also is connected to homeschooling, Karen.
Yeah.
If the school board would have denied their notice of intent and alerted CPS. This is a communication problem. I'm glad you figured it out, Karen. This is a passing the blame problem. This law will not do a thing but allow for innocent homeschoolers to be persecuted. CPS needs reformed and addressed, period. See, you can't even talk right. You're saying reformed. It needs reformed. It needs reform, Karen. Obviously, you need more homeschooling.
And she's teaching her kids. Love it.
Right.
This person then responds and said, yay, you're right. They did approve it. But with this bill, it should stop that from happening again. CPS should 100% be held accountable for their actions, but sadly, that probably won't happen. Making a law targeting children who have active cases and are being pulled is what is trying to be done. This law doesn't punish all homeschoolers. Amen. Ugh. All right. So I've highlighted this because we're also going to post this on our page. We like to talk about the evils of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, but let me make this clear. They went to great lengths to create a page to say House Bill 4440 is unconstitutional, un-American, and unnecessary. And guess what? I clicked on this link and the content has been removed. But I'm still going to post this link because I need you to see that we do not make up their detrimental effects on women like this Karen, who are so fearful of the government and so fearful that they're going to have to be held to any standards whatsoever. And this group that they pay membership to protect their asses when CPS does get called, this evil group is making it to where the murder and abuse and torture of children like Raylee doesn't stop. And there's no sense to it. So I said this page was for some reason taken down from HSLDA's page. And then I said they're evil fuckers. So I said, while I don't know why a decent person could oppose a common sense law like this, I know plenty of people personally in my life who do. And trust me, they do not meet the criteria for decency. So the page, there's another page opposing Raylee's law that we'll post.
The fact that there are oppositions to this is just insane.
And the reason I'm trying to hammer this home, Julia, so hard is because this mother, she continues to post like, hey, like, let's bring about something. I mean, she's somebody who her child was taken from her or, not allowed in her custody for some reason or another. And she paid a price for it. She paid a price. How come that same price wasn't exacted in behalf of her daughter in this situation when there was way more cause, I guarantee you, to remove Raylee from the home with the father?
Agreed.
So once again, she is just pleading with people to understand why Raylee's law is being presented to the House. She says, these are the fatalities. It doesn't include those children chained to beds and soaked in feces or locked in closets or starved. No one could imagine the way it feels, the pain and aching hurt of reading it and seeing your own baby's name on the 2018 list of fatalities. So
I can't even imagine.
She's pleading, and then she continues like to post on this over and over again. And we can provide a link to the law.
She even states another one saying that it's absolutely nothing against homeschooling your child.
Right.
She's like, just, would you read it? Would you just read it? Just look at it? Would you actually read it and think about it? It's not against
I love that this person posted, or actually, I think this was also the mom, posted the responsiblehomeschooling.org's like feature on this law. And this one stupid lady also said, thankfully, the homeschooling community is starting to see this bill is not against them. Oh, wait, no. No, this is a nice person. She says, thankfully, the homeschooling community is starting to see this bill is not against them and will save lives. We must all work together for the sake of our children. Yeah. And then again, you got Miss Karen saying that this group doesn't represent our homeschooling community. They're a group out of Massachusetts, those liberals. They can stay out of West Virginia's business. I mean, it goes on and on.
So state specific. I mean, like, why is it stay out of West Virginia's business? We're everyone's business. We're all in each other's business. We're a country.
And that's all I'm going to read of Karen. Because
state shit.
Julie, and that's the thing is like the laws vary from state to state, like we keep telling people.
Yeah.
But West Virginia is among the worst. It's like kind of like Kentucky. We're like one tier above worst. And
it's the fact selfish for them to be like, let us mind our own business and continue just so that they don't have to be held accountable at all. But I mean, it's okay with them, obviously, not to take action because they really don't care about West Virginia kids. They don't.
Well, and in addition to that, like my other main problem here, guys, is the fact that, you have such vitriolic language coming from these parents who, if they were doing things correctly and if they were following the law, the very minor minimum amount of law that surrounds homeschooling in their state, they'd have nothing to worry about. I mean, Julie and I have talked with you guys plenty about the not just those laws, but how CPS doesn't even respond to like half of the cases. There's like over, I think it was it 75% of cases that don't even get looked in on. So you may have somebody reporting like a kid out in the yard. That's super rare because I can tell you from experience that like nobody cares. And there's that laissez-faire attitude where whatever's happening in someone else's home, that's their business. And that's the problem. So I'd say you have more people who aren't reporting things that they should than there are.
And then with the amount of cases that are reported, even with that said, that don't even get addressed is just astronomical.
Guys, before we close out, we just really want to impress upon you just a quick little recap. We just told you a horrendous story about an 8-year-old little girl who was over like from the age of 1. So 8 years, just think of 8 years of your life being beaten, hit with a hammer, metal objects, burned, cut, pumped full of medicine that probably makes you ill, bones starved,
broken,
and, also sexually abused in ways that are just horrific. I would be wetting my bed every fucking night. How on earth could that little girl even have any energy to get up in the morning and just keep going?
It's amazing. She deserved better. And there are many children out there in similar situations that deserve better. And it is our business. It's everyone's business. When it comes to child safety and their mental and physical well-being, it becomes everyone's business. This isn't, what happens with the family should stay with the family, let them mind your own business. No. These are children. They're innocent. They're innocent. They're powerless. The law does not protect them. And we have to make it our business.
I want you guys to be disturbed. I want you guys to be upset by this because we're the only way that this is going to change. And we have to demand from our lawmakers, which is why we really urge you to go and call, email, and write a letter and to the lawmakers of West Virginia. I don't care if it's not in your state. Julie and I are formulating a letter to send to them, to urge them, but it takes so much more of us. And there are so much more of them who respond in crazy numbers because they feel infringed upon. And it's just not the case. And you just look at how many kids die every single day, guys. 4 to 7 children are dying in circumstances like this every single day in the United States alone. And the fact that we rank so low. We are the biggest industrialized nation, and we have the highest rate of child mortality rate of any industrialized nation. How is that even possible? And we're telling you why. Just look around you. Look at the laws. Look at what we're telling you. It's not an accident. And it's not like I asked the question not seriously because I'm starting to realize all the whys, but that it shouldn't be. What are we going to do?
Common sense laws is one of the answers to that. And there are ways to do it. But, like we've talked about before, the Homeschool Defense Association, they're very well funded and backed and staffed. And it's definitely hard going up against them with these common sense laws, which is why it's so important. So many of us actually do take action on this to confront them and actually make these happen for kids.
Because what they do so well is they whip people into a frenzy. All they have to do is get wind of something like this law. And all they have to do is make one post on their page to their members. And those people show up in droves to condemn it, be fearful. And it's like, you just picture like all those sheep that we talked about with Rachel, like we're trying to keep them in the pen and not herd them off the cliff. And they're running breakneck towards that cliff. And they're like, no, please don't save us.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep you safe. We're trying to keep everyone safe. Anyways, guys, we are going to sign off now. I'm exhausted. I was already exhausted, but that just riled me up.
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to help me read this Japanese pumpkin comment? Guys, I'm just excited because Japanese pumpkin commented again, and
she's so sweet.
I know.
I freaking love her. Oh, she makes my heart so happy.
And she commented on the homeschooling gone wrong, the Hart family murders. And here's what she says in relation to, and it could be a he, honestly. Japanese pumpkins aren't all girls, Julia. Jeez, come on now.
Okay.
So the Japanese pumpkin says, "Hi, I was super excited, the phrase I've learned from you, to hear you reading my comment. Besides, I was encouraged by your comments on my English. Thank you very much. I found the stories that you have shared so far heartbreaking. In Japan, I think most of the homeschooling results from children's truancy. It is usually the children that refuse to go to school. However, your stories, especially religious ones, remind me of one case that received a lot of publicity in the media. That is the children of Aum Shinrikyo, which is a Japanese doomsday cult, and carried out the Tokyo subway attack, killing
That's
12
crazy.
people, severely injuring 50 and causing temporary vision problems for nearly 1,000 others."
Wow. We should go into their case. We need to send us some information, links to where we can find that Japanese pumpkin. We could give us some information on cases you'd like us to cover from there. Like, we do global cases.
This would be interesting just because it says the believers and their children used to live in a religious community village and they didn't go to school. The 53 children aged 3 to 14 were later saved and sent to the children's consultation office, but they wanted to go back to the religious facility because they were brainwashed to believe that people outside the facility would attack them by poisonous gas.
Oh my gosh.
The pity is that the children of Azahara, the pity is that the children of Azahara, I struggle. Pity is that children of Azahara, the founder of the cult, could not go to school even after Azahara was arrested because they were discriminated, and wherever they went, they were refused to enter the local schools. I don't think that the children are to be blamed because they are not responsible for the cult. But anyway, in Japan, there is no law related to homeschooling. So parents don't need to get permission from the Board of Education. No certification is required for the parents, and they don't have to submit homeschooling plans. I think the law should be developed so that the Board of Education can check the progress of the children and check whether or not the children are abused. When I looked up at Japanese website on homeschooling, most of them are favorable to homeschooling. However, I know from your podcast that there certainly are negative aspects on risks of homeschooling. I hope law in your country will also be developed and there are no more children who fall through the cracks. I respect you for your activities to raise awareness. I'm learning from your episode and looking forward to your new one.
We love you. Thank you so much for your comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love
so
hearing
much.
like that story. I mean, it's happening all over the world, you guys.
Yeah, this isn't just a US problem. And it's not always religious. Sometimes it is. But it's we have kids all over the world that need attention, that need common sense laws put into place in all these countries.
And remember, guys, they are our future. They are the generation that will lead, that will pretty much put into motion the rest of, history. So we have got to treat that delicately. And like I talked about in that last episode, Julia, it is important because did you read through some of the risks that are typically associated with child abuse victims and sexual abuse victims? Like anything that deals with like neglect, child abuse, or anything, at least 30% of people who are in prison have reported child abuse or neglect or
they've been victims
sexual abuse in their past. So it's all these things.
Cycle.
Yeah. And it affects the rest of your life. And I know that it's affected mine and how I respond and how I behave. And I'm always aware of it. It's something that pretty much shapes my whole view of myself, is because I'm always trying to dig a little deeper and make sure like, okay, so.
And a lot of people try to wave that as an excuse. And here's what I have to say to you guys. Your child years are so influential. Like they're so impressionable. And they are basically what makes up the building blocks of basically how you respond to different triggers and different things, automatic response setups. So it's basically your childhood years, you're basically being programmed for how you're going to respond to stuff, like, I'm not saying that we're always going to be a product of that because, if you acknowledge it, you can work on it, but it's built into your system. And when certain tragedies, certain things happen, they do shape you forever because it's a lasting impact on basically your programming. And it takes so much effort to reverse it. So much. It's more than just going, oh, that doesn't bother me anymore. It doesn't work like that.
No. So guys, we'll leave it there. And thank you guys for tuning in. Julia and I also want to let you know that to where we can try and put more and more research into each of these cases that we cover, we're not going to go back to recording every week. We're going to be recording and releasing 2 times a month to where we can dig further than we did for this case. We want to really do our due diligence and have more information for you to where we can give these snuffed out lives, some honor and dignity in how we cover them and how we tell their stories, and we want to tell them correctly. So we apologize if there were any inconsistencies in this story that we told. It took me
It's a lot to get through.
It's a lot
to get through. Just mentally, even if there's not a lot of reading material for any of these cases, just the details alone makes it hard mentally and emotionally to just get through it, just because especially when you see the picture of them and they're so innocent.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
It's heartbreaking. And I just want to let you guys know that we take this very, very seriously. And we would love to hear your comments, your suggestions on stories. Maybe you've heard about friends. Maybe it hasn't happened to you directly. Maybe it has. Please send those in. We would like to cover them. We want to really bring awareness to this. Please go rate and review us. Wherever you listen, just, give us some stars, 5 stars, hopefully, and review the podcast. And then also visit us at www.thefamilytiespodcast.com and comment. And we would love to hear and share your thoughts on these things as well, positive and negative. So please type away.
That goes for you too, Karens. I just can't wait to get to read your comments on air for fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Julia. All right, well, we will leave you there. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.